history, which is oysters. There's so much talk of oysters when you look at sort of the early restaurant history, and there's some amazing writing about it, and it seems to be the thing that everyone cares most about. So I guess I'm kind of curious, because that's not the first food I think of when I think of New York history, New York food now. Sort of what happened, what's the big deal about oysters, and is there room for some kind of resurgence, or is there one? Do you want to start?
Well, I mean, you know, there's a whole tragedy contained in your question, which is when the Dutch came here, they saw oysters within a stone's throw of us right here that were the size of dinner plates, and for many, many decades, this is just the greatest natural habitat for growing of oysters on the face of the earth. And there were dozens and dozens of varieties that were famous for diners in New York all over the city. They knew these Shrewsburys and Saddle Rocks and Prince's Bay oysters. I could go on, and all of them are just dead as the dodo as varieties. Blue Points, we all know, that remains, and that was famous, but along with the Blue Points were all these others. Well, you know, we all know what happened is when you dump sewage into water, and gradually the beds became polluted, and farther up the rivers and throughout the bays, these natural beds died off. Consumption was so voracious in New York that you had to have farming very early on. I mean, by 1850, you had to, you know, bring seed oysters from other locations, particularly the Chesapeake Bay, and then put them in these little habitats. You know, oysters have terroir. It's all the same species, but they develop different taste qualities depending on where they are, just like grapes. And the number of oyster restaurants, there were just several to every block, and some of them were just the grandest, most fabulous restaurants in the city. Just the little vestigial evidence of this today is the Oyster Bar at Grand Central, which I still love as just being very, not the restaurant part of it, but the counter that you sit down at, that as being a kind of taste of what New York had to have been like if you multiply that several hundredfold. There were these great oyster restaurants and very inexpensive oyster sellers and carts on the street. You could buy them off the boats. They were everywhere. They were prepared in dozens of different varieties and with styles. And it was the food par excellence of New York. And that's just past history now.